What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue with our 2025 predictions for the upcoming 2025 college football season. Up next is the Virginia Cavaliers. Virginia coming off a little bit of a better season compared to, where they've been in the last few years as a program. They're coming off at 5-7 years, so not a bad year in my opinion. They didn't make it to a bowl game, which is obviously, of course, tough. But yeah, Tony Elliott, the head coach for this Virginia team, we'll see if he can have a turnaround this season and possibly get this Virginia football program to a bowl game this year. Their schedule does set up pretty well and have a chance to definitely make it to a bowl game. But you look at this team for 2025, my thoughts on this team before we get into the predictions. You got a couple of options at quarterback. You got a couple of transfers coming in. You got Chandler Morris, though, that does have a ton of experience. So yeah, I think he's a big upgrade for this quarterback position for Virginia. The problem is, though, for Virginia, I do like their starters, but the depth is definitely a concern. They don't have a ton of depth on both sides of the football, so that's why I think Virginia could probably have a pretty up and down year. But again, the schedule does give them a chance to have a pretty solid season in 2025. Again, here is that schedule, and you look at their schedule, they don't have to play Clemson, they don't have to play Miami, so yeah, pretty much the top two teams, and they also don't have to play SMU either, so pretty much the top three teams from the ACC last year. They do got Louisville on the schedule, and they do play that one on the road, so that might be the toughest game here on the schedule. But again, this team was 5-7 last year in 2024, so let's go game by game, and I'll give you my official prediction for this Virginia football team. For 2025, they start things off with Coastal Carolina on August the 30th. That's a pretty quality group of five team in Coastal Carolina. They've been pretty good as a program, in the few years that they've been as a program in the Sun Belt. But I think Virginia definitely is the better team. Maybe Coastal Carolina does give them a little bit of a surprise here. And obviously, it's the first game, pretty much with these new players that they added in from the transfer portal. So yeah, I think it's going to take some time for Virginia to kind of get used to each other. But I think they'll beat Coastal Carolina here. I'm going to say it's not a blowout. They probably win it by 14 to 17 points. But I got the Cavaliers starting off 1-0. And then they play NC State on the road here on September 6th. And remember, this is not going to be counted as a conference game. When I did my NC State video not even too long ago, I did say that this was going to be counted as a non-conference game. This will not be counted towards the ACC standings. So they will play each other as non-conference opponents. Yeah, that's really interesting that they're playing as non-conference opponents instead of conference teams. But this one is on the road. I don't really expect Virginia to have a pretty big opportunity in this one. NC State, that's a pretty tough place to play. And I think the Wolfpack definitely are going to be a little bit better this year. And they do have a solid roster. So NC State, I think, does get the win. I'm going to say they win it by at least a couple of touchdowns. So that's going to give Virginia their first loss of the season. Again, not a conference game, a non-conference game against the Wolfpack there on September 6th. And then they take care of William & Mary here the next week on September 13th. That should be the easiest win on this entire schedule for Virginia all season long. And I got this team getting off to a 2-1 start. Then they go into conference play to play Stanford at home here on September 20th. Pretty even matchup here between these two teams and pretty similar programs. Both of these programs have not been heading in the right direction. Even before Stanford became a member of the ACC, they have just been a bad program, ever since they were in the Pac-12. And yeah, they used to be a powerhouse. They still are as a program-wise, but they just have not been trending in the right direction. And I'm not really high on this Stanford team this year. I think Virginia playing at home, I think it's a pretty even matchup. 50-50 game, home field advantage will be the difference. And I think the Cavaliers actually get their first win in the ACC here on September 20th against Stanford, and that's going to put them here at 3-1. Then they play on a Friday night against Florida State on September 26th. This will be a home game here for the Cavaliers. Pretty big opportunity for Virginia to get a big win here, in the early part of the season. But, Florida State is still a talented team. They still got the better talented team, in my opinion, compared to Virginia. But you never know. These Friday night games, they turn out to be big surprises. And, sometimes these lesser programs do pull off an upset somewhere. But I don't think it will happen in this game. I think the Seminoles, again, I'm expecting them to turn things around this year. Not to be a contender in the ACC or anything like that. But I think Florida State is the better team on paper. So I think Virginia will be competitive. This game probably does go into the fourth quarter, but I think they'll come up short. I think the Cavaliers will fall here to Florida State, and I got them dropping now to 3-2. Then they play on the road at Louisville on October the 4th. I don't really think this is going to be a close game. I think this is probably going to be the toughest game maybe on the schedule for Virginia all year. Louisville is going to be a pretty talented team. They brought in so many, additions in the transfer portal. So yeah, I think Virginia does get blown out in this game. So I'm going to go with the Cardinals in that one. So 2 losses in a row after pretty much a 3-1 start, and then they drop to 3-3. After that, though, they get a bye week before playing Washington State at home on October 18th. This was a pretty solid Washington State team, but we don't really study them. They're a former Pac-12 team, and they're in the Pac-2, whatever you want to call it. And we've seen again a lot of these non-conference games. Some of these teams in the ACC are playing like against former Pac-12 teams and former Power 5 teams as well. I think playing at home and off the bye week, I think Virginia does bounce back. I think they beat Washington State, but I think it will be close for quite a while. But I'm going to go with the Cavaliers here to get the win. That's going to put them at 4-3. Then you got North Carolina here on the road on October 25th. Tough place to play, obviously. Bill Belichick taking over as the head coach. But, as a program, North Carolina, before even Bill Belichick came here, the Tar Heels always have struggled against Virginia. So maybe that's the case here for this game. Maybe North Carolina does have a little bit of a win streak. They probably overlooked this Virginia team. And Virginia does come out and, play pretty competitive. But I think it's just the first half. I think it will be close in the first half. But second half, I think that's where North Carolina will start to pull away. And I think the Tar Heels playing at home, that's really the difference here as well. I'm going to go with the Tar Heels to get the win. So that's going to drop Virginia now back to 500 at 4-4. Then it gets in the month of November. They play California on the road on November 1st. So they do have to travel out west. I think this is going to be really tough here for Virginia to win this game, but I think they'll be competitive. I think for at least a while. Maybe this game does go into the fourth quarter, but I did my California prediction video just from yesterday, and I did pick the Golden Bears to win this game. They also have a pretty easy schedule. Both of these teams have pretty easy schedules in the ACC, especially in the conference schedule as well. So I'm going to go with Cal, though, to win this game. So that's back-to-back losses there for Virginia. That's going to put them here at 4-5. So you kind of start to question now Tony Elliott's job probably by this time. But after that, they kind of get a break here. They play Wake Forest at home here on November 8th. Kind of similar to the Stanford game. I think it's a pretty even matchup, 50-50 game. I think it's a coin flip here. Wake Forest going to have a new coach this season. They haven't been really great in the last couple of years. And also, Virginia's playing at home. I do expect them to bounce back here after back-to-back losses, both on the road. I didn't realize they had back-to-back road games there with North Carolina and Cal. Yeah, those are 2 tough back-to-back road games. Probably the toughest, back-to-back here on this schedule. But I think they do beat Wake Forest. They get back to 500, and that's going to put them here at 5-5. So you go into the final 2 games of the season. 1 win away from being bowl eligible. After that, though, they play Duke on the road on November 15th. I think Virginia will be competitive in this game. Obviously Duke, I think, is going to have a pretty good defense. That's obviously going to be the strength of that Blue Devil team, and they also got a quarterback that does have a ton of experience as well. So it probably does come down to which quarterback that I do trust in this game. Well, I do trust the Duke quarterback a lot more, so I'm going to go with the Blue Devils here to get the win. That's going to put Virginia now at 5-6, and then they finally get their second bye week. So they get their first bye week in the month of October, and then their final bye week doesn't come until the end of the season. They will play Virginia Tech to close things out at home here on November 29th, of course, a rivalry game. Virginia Tech on paper, they are just the better team, and Kyron Jones back at quarterback, I do trust him more than, the Virginia quarterback coming up this year and Garrett Morris. But yeah, this Virginia Tech team, I feel like they're not going to be really great this year. I mean, they'll be right there as a pretty average team, but not a contender in the ACC, and not even a dark horse team. But again, the roster-wise, I think Virginia Tech is better, and they definitely have a ton of more depth than Virginia does. But this is a pretty big opportunity to get a big win here for Virginia. I mean, they'll have a chance here in this game to definitely have a chance to win for a bowl game, and they'll come in fired up because of the rivalry. But still, I don't think it will be enough. I think the Hokies do pull off the win here, and I think Virginia does come up short, making it to a bowl game. They lose their last 2 games of the regular season. So yeah, 5-7 is my prediction for this Virginia team, but I wouldn't be surprised if this team did go 6-6 because look at this schedule. Again, they don't have Clemson, they don't have SMU or Miami. So yeah, you don't play the top 3 teams in the ACC, but you got Louisville. That might be the toughest road game. They got North Carolina, who could be a sneaky good team in the ACC. And plus, they got some other tough road games. NC State, Cal, and Duke. Duke is not a very tough place to play, but NC State and Cal, those are tricky places to play. But what if they pull off an upset against Florida State? That would definitely not be a shocker since that one is on a Friday. I thought about picking Virginia to pull off the upset. If I would have chose it, I mean, it probably would be at a 6-6 prediction. But again, 5-7 or 6-6. I think those are the likely scenarios there for Virginia in 2025. But I think this team just comes up short of making it to a bowl game. I'm going to go 5-7 here for the Cavaliers for 2025. So that's my prediction for Virginia in 2025. Do you guys agree or disagree with this prediction? And give me your prediction for Virginia down in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video and stay tuned for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports YouTube channel.